So good evening, everybody. My name is LP Mainville. I'm the Director of Sport Development and Technology for the OVA, and it's a pleasure for me to, welcome you on this call tonight, and to also introduce you to the few people that will be helping us with this presentation tonight. And we have a few people from the OVA. Our Executive Director, Joanne Lubicic, just joined us. We have Claire Melançon from our youth competition indoor staff. And we also have a couple of board members that are here. I know that I saw Andrew Nichols, who was part of the working group that we had with this project over the last year. So welcome, Andrew. Thanks for being here. And I believe the president of the board also, Howie Grossinger, is supposed to join us at some point as well. So a few people from the OVA, and we also have the people from Sport for Life, who I will introduce you and who will talk to you in a few minutes. We have Tom Jones, who is with Sport for Life, also a volleyball alumni. So good to have you, Tom. And then Tawana as well from Sport for Life. So thank you for all being here. We're going to go to the next slide, Tawana, and just go over the agenda for tonight. So already done the little welcome and introductions. We're going to tell you a little bit about why we're doing the session. And then Tawana and Tom will take over to talk about the competition review process that they ran with us. They're going to discuss the survey findings and recommendations that came out of this process. And then at the end, I will take over to talk to you a little bit about how the implementation of these recommendations are going to go. And we'll finish at the end with some questions. But if you have them during the call, please put them in the chat, and we'll make sure to come back to them at the end. Just a note about that. I know you will be tempted to have questions about the details, but we're not going to answer these questions tonight because we don't know, and you'll see, we'll talk about it when we talk about implementation. We'll answer all of the questions that pertain to the process itself and the big picture. But all of the details, of the changes that are going to come, we don't know about those details yet, and they are things that we're going to figure out over the following months working with you. So we'll touch on that in a bit, but we'll do that Q&A at the end. Next slide, please. Yes. So in terms of why this session, well, I think many of you, if you're here, you were probably aware that we ran a competition review over the past year. This is because we could see that since COVID, there was really big increase in growth in numbers and participation numbers across the province. And we felt that we needed to look at our competition and the way it's run to make sure that if that growth continues in a few years from now, we are able to make the changes that will allow us to continue delivering really, really high quality experiences for athletes, coaches, referees, clubs, and so on in the OVA. So obviously this growth puts pressure on our staff, on facilities, and all that stuff. And we wanted to be proactive in making sure that as the sport continues to be popular and attract a high number of participants, that we were going to be able to continue delivering the great services that OVA is known for. So we went out and sought some consultant to help us do this work. And we landed on Sport for Life and decided to go with them because of their expertise in the area. They are industry leaders, definitely when it comes to competition, youth competition, structure, sports in general, and not just here in Canada, but across the world. They've worked with a ton of organizations here at home and abroad. And we really wanted to work with the best in this field. And we were fortunate to be able to work with Sport for Life, Richard, Tom, Tawana, who are here tonight. So the way that we structured this project was that Sport for Life was going to come in, do some surveys, do a study, consult with our stakeholders and members, and provide recommendations of what kind of changes and adjustments are necessary for OVA to be able to continue to do what we do and accommodate the growth that we see. And not just that, but also enhance the participants' experience. And the most important thing was that they were going to come and do this while being mindful of our Volleyball Canada development framework, and also, most importantly, the long-term development models principles. And so Sport for Life would do that. And then once we have the recommendations in hand, then OVA would come to the table with an implementation plan, right? Because we do know our constraints, we know our members, community, the tools that we have, the resources that we have, so that we can actually determine what can be done first, what are the timelines and constraints that we're working with. So that's essentially where we're at right now. Tom and his team, they were able to do this this phase. They provided us with the recommendations, and we are now at a point where we can share with you our plan for the implementation. But before we go there, we definitely wanted Tom and Tawana to walk all of you through the process and what they did, what they found, and we wanted them to tell you what the recommendations that they had for OVA, for volleyball in Ontario, so that you hear it from them. And so I will pass the mic to Tom. And without further ado, Tom, please take it away.
Okay. All right. Thanks, LP. Good evening, everyone. Tawana and I are really, really pleased to be here to participate in this information giving kind of session. First of all, it's been a real pleasure for us to work with OVA, with Joanne and LP and the staff, as well as the working group. And I know a number of folks I think are on the call tonight. So thanks to Andrew and Alicia and others on the call. It's been a really good learning process for us, as LP said. We have done a number of these kinds of reviews before. We generally work in quality sport and physical literacy, of which competition review is an important piece of that. So I'm a volleyball person, so I have a sense of the environment, but just to get a sense of the process that would seem the most reasonable here, we laid out the process you see in front of you, from firstly getting our heads around the project, mapping out a means of engaging with the OVA community, looking at how we're going to gather data, surveys, those kinds of things. So working with the working group, we put together a plan to gather and compile and look at the data, and look at the opportunities that are there. And then the next steps were, of course, to synthesize that into some insights and some recommendations. And then, and really the other recommendations that are for the OVA. So tonight we're going to take you through the process of how we got to the recommendations, what the recommendations are, and the implications for those. And then it's really over to LP and the OVA staff to look at what's reasonable, to make of it what they will, and then lay out for you the plan going forward from there. So let's walk through a little bit of that process in a little bit more detail. I'll try not to get into massive detail. And you probably, a number of you have one eye on the TV watching the Jays game at the same time. So I'll try and keep it fairly simple. This is the most complicated and busy slide you're going to see, so I'll get to it early on in the going here. This is about well over a year of work. You'll see June, we're engaged in 2024 right up until the present day. So it's been over a year. We formed a working group, of which as I say, a number of you are on the call tonight, and I want to thank you for your engagement. We tried to look at the scope of the project, put together a reasonable plan, get out into the environment to look at what we were dealing with here. So a consultation plan and environmental scan. We then looked at how do we gather data? And again, thank you to those of you that are on the call that participated in surveys, workshops, stakeholder interviews. We had really good response there, and I'll get into more detail on that in a little bit. But it was very not only great to see, but also we learned a lot. And so that was very helpful. We also reached out to other jurisdictions across the province and in a couple of other countries, and other sports as well, I should say, to look at what principles we could pull from, what examples we could maybe borrow from or learn from. So those were helpful in our work as well. And then we ultimately put together some recommendations from the data that we had. We bounced that back off a group that you may be familiar with called the IVDC, which is the Indoor Volleyball Development Committee, which was helpful to us in helping guide our thinking and sort of measure whether they made some sense or whether we needed to do some more investigation. So those are very, very helpful. So that's an overview of the process that we undertook to deal with this. And just in terms of a high level look at the engagement, and I have to, I guess, remind myself the extent of that engagement. It really was not only impressive, but it was really great to see. Lots of response from parents, of course. This is our youth club volleyball, so you'd expect parents to be a significant respondent in this type of survey. But we did have good responses from other sectors, from coaches, athletes, referees, and club leadership as well, recognizing that club leaders are extremely busy. So, they live this life day in, day out. We had pretty good responses as well, or pretty good distribution across the number of years involved in it. I think we had about 60% of participants had three or more years of involvement in volleyball, which is good. So we've got people who had a little bit of experience, or their kids had experience, or they themselves had experience in the sport, and so are coming from, I think, an informed perspective here. So we had very close to 1,800 respondents, which I think is a pretty good response rate. What's the next one, Twana? In terms of demographics, again, good variance across the different levels, the different tiers of participation, and also from ages as well. So we had from U13 right up to U18, a pretty good distribution. We did have a chance to talk to athletes, as I'll say in a little bit, around focus groups and putting specific questions to them for their feedback. So again, engagement here was a critical piece of this, and we were quite pleased with the level of that, and it gave us the data that we found helpful to move on to the next steps. And as you'll see, we ended up taking the survey results, and then from those results, forming some questions that we could take forward in different formats. So that could be through focus groups. You'll see on your screen athletes, coaches, directors, referees, or officials, however we wish to call them. We had good workshops with a number of workshops with club leaders across different parts of the province, different clubs. Attended provincial championships, and then had some specific stakeholder interviews with Volleyball Canada, multiple times with the IBDC, and then went out to other provinces, BC, Alberta, others to gather some, I guess, best practices or some comparative protocols that they do to give ourselves some more perspective. So again, a little piece of the engagement process and the interview process that we undertook. So just in general terms, the survey itself elicited almost 1,800 responses. We got a sense that there was strong interest in this topic. People are passionate about this sport. As LP said right off the top, the sport is growing across the country, probably across the world, but certainly in Canada, growing very, very quickly. People are engaged, they're committed, and there was a sense that people wanted to participate in helping shape the future of club volleyball in Ontario, because you have a lot of stake in this, whether it's driving kids, coaching kids, refereeing, just wanting to see people develop and become the best athletes, coaches that they can be. So very gratified to see that people really wanted to be involved and jump on board of this process. So let's talk a little bit now about some things that we noticed. And I should say up front that there is a high degree of satisfaction amongst OVA members for what's going on in the province. Not only with the way the OVA is managing the process, but with the formats themselves, with the way the competitions are being structured in the tiering system. There's a lot of good things going on. As you'll see, strong support for the quality of play, the types of formats. The provincials particularly, very highly supported. and in terms of wanting to maintain that festival-like atmosphere, having, boys and girls, different tiers in the same building at around the same time makes for that experience. And we all know that from having been involved in this sport. It's one of the real attractors to the sport, as well as being, testing yourself and improving along the way. The ability of the OVA to try and create meaningful competition, meaning, try and have balanced competition where there is not a lot of blowouts, not a lot of one-sided matches. Those are going to happen, but the tiers help to account for that. And the idea here is to try and create a system that meets the developmental needs of all athletes, because as we all know, people compete for different reasons. They may be focused on, performance. They may be focused on going to different competitions. They may just want to be participating with friends, but still compete and compete hard and make that connection. And again, strong support for the way the OVA is putting their provincial championships and major events generally across the board here. So those are some of the things that are working well. Let's go to the next slide, Tawana. So I'll just walk you through the end of this process before we get into the recommendations themselves. Um, what we're trying to do when we looked at the recommendations themselves is we want to, as best we can, ensure that they do align with long-term athlete development principles and physical literacy principles. Again, with the welfare and well-being of the athlete firmly in mind. Also with I guess the well-being and satisfaction of parents, because they're a large piece of the puzzle here, and making as best sure as we can that the tournaments and the competitions are aligned and set up in such a way that parents can see their way through this, and not, cost barriers, travel barriers, all those sorts of things. Trying to manage those in as reasonable a sense as possible. Try to layer in also considerations around, in terms of the atmosphere within club tournaments and club competitions, aspects of equity, diversity, inclusion, accessibility. So making sure that environment is safe and feels comfortable for people, and including considerations around climate change, such as travel and overnight stays and the facilities themselves. And then ultimately, with an eye on implementation, although that wasn't our central focus, that we're here to create recommendations that can go to the OVA for their implementation talks. But we try to keep a bit of this in mind as we went as well. So those are some considerations when we put the recommendations together. So let's jump to some of the recommendations here, and I'll do it in two parts. One will be a core recommendation, and there'll be a series of secondary recommendations as well. So the core recommendation here is accommodating everybody's needs by creating by differentiating the divisions and the streams of play, with each stream having very clear goals, developmental objectives, and the alignment of the structure itself. So we'll talk a little bit about why and how we came up with that, and what supports that. So if we go to the next slide here to support these sorts of things, here's what we're talking about. And I should say, when I talk about these different streams and we're terming them as provincial or national divisions, I want to be very clear that that's not the name, or may not be the name, that we end up with, or that you end up with. What we're suggesting here is that there be a stream that is more focused on leading towards provincial championships. So hence the provincial division terminology. It's more focused on leading towards provincials, looking at multi-sport participation. So enabling an athlete to play volleyball, but also play other sports. Again, focusing towards the provincial championships. So suggesting a shorter season. So it may run, and as an example, it may run from December through to May. Fewer practices, more aligned around allowing more sort of balance between training and competition, allowing athletes to participate in other sports as they see fit. A second division, or a second stream, which we're terming a national division, which is more focused on aiming towards the national championships. And it may also be for athletes who are commitments are such that they really are focusing on post-secondary, national, or professional level of play. So it's going to then be obviously be requiring more commitment, more training, more competitions, and a longer season. So that's the general approach we had around streams here to differentiate those two pathways again to allow the system to accommodate different intentions, different levels of commitment. But again, I want to emphasize that both of these streams are competitive. This is not about a recreational versus a high performance. This is all about competition, but just streamed in different ways. So I wanted to make that clear. And again, I'll reiterate that these are not the end names for these divisions or these streams. These are a starting point, and certainly the OVA will consult pretty heavily on how best to move on from there. Let me go into a little bit of some of the data that would support some of this. So you'll see on the graph on the left that respondents, about 74% of respondents support the idea of creating different pathways of competition, again, to manage the growth and the quality of it. Again, 47% of respondents do believe that the quality of OVA competition has gotten better and probably will continue to get better. So trying to align this in a way that the pathways enable growth to happen for people at the level that they want to participate in, the level of commitment is where we're coming from around creating the two-stream approach here. So other recommendations to support these are some ideas that we are recommendations that we wanted to propose to the OVA. Again, coming from the data, which, for example, allowing older teams to continue to play up. There are lots of pros and cons about playing up, and I'll get into some more detail in a second here. But the consensus seems to be that playing up is a reasonable thing. There'll certainly be, I think, conditions put on some of that, but as a general principle, allowing them to play up was supported and seems to make some sense. There was, from what we've seen, an appetite to have more regional play. So clubs hosting events in the regions, allowing more closer to home play, less travel where appropriate. We realize that people that may have a national focus will want to travel, and that's part of volleyball, as we all know, is you need to travel to compete against other teams and perhaps teams that will challenge you more. But there was an appetite to have more regional play, a strong appetite for competing in large venues. That was something that came through very strongly. The convention center idea, provincial championships, and perhaps other ones in the future, festivals, those sorts of things, highly supported. Balancing 2-day and 1-day events. There are both of them are offered currently, and there's certainly pros and cons to both of those, but some strong support for 2-day events as well, and doing that in a meaningful way. I'll talk a bit about some structural enhancements to support this new competition framework, and also some system leadership and operational excellence ideas. But I'll go into now a little bit more detail on some of these supporting recommendations. The first is around the playing up. So most people favor not having a cap, and you can see the reasons there. To allow athletes to really kind of spread their wings and develop by playing up against stronger competition. It allows for more competition and more playing opportunities. There are certainly some who would feel that playing up is not the greatest approach for them, and there may be situations where the OVA would look at limitations or conditions there. So I think just as a general rule, we're recommending that play up idea continue on, and that there be dialogue amidst the membership in the OVA as to making sure that it remains fair and it remains a meaningful competition piece. Under the next one, for regional events, you'll see on the graph that large 3/4 of respondents felt that distance and travel are important, and of course those are always linked to cost. So one of our recommendations is that there be more events in the regions. They also, again, under the Ontario Championships piece, 80% felt that the major events were really well done and important to be together, but felt that there was certainly an opportunity here to look at a higher level of regional events, which opens up the opportunity for clubs to host those. So you'll probably see some dialogue around those opportunities, what they would look like, what support the OVA can offer, and what the club hosting needs really are. I know there's lots of it goes on right now. There certainly seems to be an appetite for more of that to occur. And then the next slide is really just around the large venues and convention center events. You'll see pretty strong support for convention center and large scale facilities. Events to continue. I know the OVA every year books 2 or 3 years out to secure large facilities, but know that there is a strong wave of support to have that continue and to maybe even amp up. So that was just a piece I wanted to pull from the survey to support that recommendation. Under the next one, Tawana, this one I wanted to jump into for just a little bit here, and I'll just go into it. So under athlete well-being and performance, there's certainly, the 1 day versus the 2 day elicits different scenarios here. The 2 day, of course, allows athletes to recover quicker and recover for a little less strain on the athlete's bodies, allows them to rest and recover, allows them to kind of prepare in a different way and have a little bit more time to do that than a 1 day. And also the 2 day does mimic the format of major competitions in the provincials and internationals. So certainly the 2 days is helpful there. 1 day, of course, allows for reduced cost, allows parents to have a one-night stay versus perhaps a two-night stay. So there are certainly pros and cons of both of these, but trying to find that right balance from an athlete well-being and performance perspective is important. The development and strategy here, certainly competition anyway, generally allows athletes to grow. The 2 day format does allow for a little bit more ability to create different strategy over the course of the weekend, allows chances to play more matches. It allows officials to have a chance to grow and spend more time, doing their craft and refereeing competition. So allows that growth to occur. Under the logistics and value piece, this is, the argument of a 2 day allows sort of more bang for your buck. If you're going there, you play more matches. That's very helpful. The 1 day is one where you come in and you leave, but you may not have played as many matches as you like, or as you would have liked. The 2 day does allow for the athletes to sort of spread out the weekend, and it may perhaps allows for fewer early starts and late finishes. Again, some of those things that the OVA will be trying to balance out. And then, of course, the 1 day versus the 2 day, it's trying to get that right mixture of how much bonding and connection can occur on those trips. We all know that traveling is a great way to build team. It's trying to find that balance of how long you stay away and incur costs and travel versus a shorter kind of trip. So some thoughts there around the balancing of 2 and 1 day events, and that'll be over to all of you in the community with the OBA to sort through what makes the most sense there. But wanted to put that on the radar screen as a really important piece and one that we heard consistently throughout the study. So on to structural enhancements, and this one I wanted to touch on a little bit. In terms of the enhancements, trying to find that competition framework that really optimizes scheduling. It allows for formats and rules to align with the LTAD principles. Ensures an age-appropriate season length. Again, trying to match up the age and the commitment level of athletes to the training frequency and the amount of competition that goes on and the length of the season. This helps to refine the tiering and pricing for the OVA. and I think allows it to strengthen delivery through maybe a bit enhanced regional coordination. One of the things that came out of a couple of the workshops and focus groups was the notion of house leagues. So in that, clubs can create internal competitions, either within that club or with neighboring clubs in the region. And it's nothing to say that the house leagues can't be a very, very good way to develop athletes without incurring long distances and travel. And one way that this could happen in almost a more interesting way for house leagues is to then have house league champions play against other house leagues in different regions. So creating kind of almost a little bit of a league play, but within the house league system. And it's something that I think is bears exploring and discussing. It's been something that we've seen in some of the other provinces is starting and has been quite well received. And then ultimately making sure that as we go through this, that there are measurable performance indicators. And as LP will lay out in a little while, as these things are implemented, that the metrics follow along with the things that are being put in place. So a little bit on the structural enhancements there. And then lastly, I wanted to touch on this one, which is kind of laying out what we often talk about in Sport for Life is people, places, and programs. Trying to come up to create the system that is organized around people, operations, and competitions, which really creates an environment for everyone to flourish. Under the people piece, it's about advancing coaching. I've got some ideas around that. Supporting athletes to a greater degree and coming up with things where the athlete is receiving the mental support that they require, has the competitive level that really helps them move forward and develop to the degree that they can. It may be mental skills, those sorts of things. And then behavioral expectations as well. We've spoken to a number of provinces and to Volleyball Canada about creating a video, kind of an intake video that sort of sets the foundation for expectations of parents and coaches and athletes in terms of their on-court conduct, their between games, coming to tournaments, respect for referees, those sorts of things. There is certainly training. There are training materials available currently through OVA, but I think there are other things that could be done, almost standardized across the country, but something that can lay those out in a more impactful way with all of the accompanying rules and consequences and those sorts of things. On the operations side, looking at the role of OVA in terms of what their leadership role is, how much if they feel comfortable delegating to clubs to take on more hosting role, the kinds of supports that would be required if that were to happen, to a more regionalized approach, how the OVA staffing model will work to support that. Communications is a strong point for OVA, but there are always ways to improve that. I know there's a movement to integrate some digital tools. That's certainly something that we're seeing across the country, and it can certainly happen within volleyball in Ontario. Facilities, always the bane of people's existence in organizing annual events and annual within a sport. OVA's done a lot of, I think, really good things, very innovative things about signing long-term contracts and engaging facility owners and trying to find that. And they'll continue to enhance their approach in putting the facilities and the tiering together and aligning that to, and as the last piece says, aligning that in such a way that it has the minimizes the impact on climate. And then ultimately in competitions, ensuring meaningful competition, balancing event formats, continuing to try and find high quality venues and probably prioritize for higher level play in terms of maybe the more national focused division for the higher quality venues, but a certain minimum level of quality venue, ensuring that the rules are consistent and well communicated. We had some very good conversations with the officials group, and I was just going to dive into a little bit of that in a second here. I want to just turn to that. Let me just go down to officials here. Yeah, including standardizing the referee development and expectations, helping to train young referees, and recruiting and training young referees, making sure they're protected in environments where they may be young in refereeing in scenarios where the athletes may be the same age as the referees, or in some cases, even younger, who knows? And in making sure that environment is a safe and comfortable one for them, and making sure that there's support for the ongoing education and communication to the officials. And then lastly, transparent performance tracking, ultimately designed to find the system that really has OVA leading the country in aligning all of these steps so that the system is functioning, to its maximum. So there's some thoughts there around the enhanced leadership and operational excellence. And I want to just turn now to the last piece here under implementation. We're proposing here, or what we're recommending, are steps that the OVA can consider to manage growth and ensure that the competition system offers opportunities for athletes, coaches, and parents and everyone at the level that they're comfortable with. The implementation plan will now take those recommendations and walk through a number of steps. I'll turn to LP in just a second here. But some of the considerations here will be, around the OVA and IDC will look at these recommendations and sort of focus on what's doable, what's in what time frame. They'll look at a lot of collaboration with clubs and with key stakeholders, because the transition piece will be important here as change and steps occur. It's going to be really critical for communication and transparency to be really important pieces of this process. So a communication plan will be very, very important, as will engagement of the community as things start to unfold here. So those are some considerations around the implementation. I'm going to turn now to LP for some of the ideas around what the OVA is considering for the next couple of years. But I want to also, just before I turn it to LP, want to say again, thank the community for engagement in this process, for your desire to see positive change, and again to the OVA for the opportunity, because it's been a real pleasure working with all of you and with LP and Joanne on this process, and looking forward to following all the implementation stages. Always here for feedback and bounce back. So over to you, LP.
Thanks, Tom. And really, it should be us thanking you, and Tawana and Richard and Jenna, who we haven't mentioned, but who worked on this with us, this past year. Thank you to you and your team for all the work you did. You were really, really diligent in making sure you talk to everybody across the community, across the province, to gather feedback from everyone. And I think it really showed in the report that you produced. And speaking of the report, I'm putting it in the chat here. There's a link to our website. So the full report lives on our website. It's on a page that's live right now, so you can access it and you can read the whole thing for yourself. If you'd like, you're going to see essentially what Tom spoke about in a bit more detail. So I think were you going to show it, Tawana?
Yeah, sorry, I tried to click it, but no, it's fine. I can.
Yeah, it took the screen away. No problem. Yeah, so it's on the website, everybody, if you want to go in and read it. And what I'm going to do is essentially what Tom said, is just walk you through what the next steps are going to be now that we have this report and we want to go into implementation phase. So the working group, they got together once we got the final recommendations, and we had to go through everything and start prioritizing, looking at what's feasible, looking at our resources, looking at where the biggest impact would be. And we came up with a phased approach for implementing the changes that are recommended by Sport for Life. And since a core recommendation is to work with different streams in our competition, this is what we decided to go with, and we decided to go with implementing that for the 13U to 17U girls as of next season, so the 26-27 season. And the reason for that is because in these age groups, particularly on the girls' side, the age groups are becoming so big that the puzzle piece is getting bigger than the frame itself. And so it's becoming really hard to just fit an entire age group when there's 200 teams, and we're not talking about playing up teams, 200 up age teams in one venue for OCs, in one weekend for a regular OVA season tournament. So we need smaller puzzle pieces so that we can put everything together and make it work, and so that we can be able to give everybody a chance to play. And specifically in these age groups, they are so big, they're becoming so big that having these smaller puzzle pieces by having, let's say, splitting, let's say 15 new girls in 2 streams, that will help us be able to find everybody a facility, a weekend to play, and will make things a lot easier. Now, we are starting with that as the core recommendation. Now, Tom walked us through some of the secondary recommendations, and those will be rolled out gradually as we go through this process, because when we're talking about things such as more convention center, 2-day versus 1-day events, regional, more regional play, and all that stuff, that's all going to be I guess rolled out as part of the work that we're going to do in implementing this bigger recommendation of streaming the competition structure. So that will be the first step next year, next season. And it's going to be important that as we do this, we take the time to evaluate how things are going and we make some adjustments. And we don't know how long this is going to take. We are very open-minded here and are going to stay flexible so that we can come up with the best way to implement this. We know that we're going to do great work here, but there's probably going to be some kinks to iron out after the first year. So we're going to evaluate, make some adjustments so that we are ready when the time comes to go to step 3, which is to implement this with other age groups in the boys' side. That might come sooner than we think because of need, because of, again, the growth continuing and whatnot. But we want to make sure that, we're nimble, we're evaluating, adjusting, and making this work for everybody. So that's what you can expect in terms of larger picture steps. And the thing I want to talk about is really the next piece, which is on the next slide there. And it's about something that Tom said, and we're really committed to continuing the process with the same level of engagement that we saw throughout the first phase of this project, when we had consultation with all the different groups. And so that stakeholder engagement is going to be key. So we're going to continue collaborating with club leaders, with our various committees, such as the IVDC or regional council, etc. Coaches, referees, parents, athletes. We want to get everybody still involved as we go through this. So before, we wanted their input in terms of how things were going, so we could, learn that, and so that Sport for Life could give us those recommendations. Now that we have them, we want to go to everybody to see, okay, well, how will this impact you, and what's the best way to make it work, right? Obviously, doing something like streams is going to have an impact on the calendar, but it's going to have obviously an impact on clubs and perhaps like how you're conducting tryouts and whatnot, right? So that's something that we need to talk to clubs about. Same thing with regards to rules. Rules might be different in different streams. So we need to talk to club coaches, referees, right? We need to engage people. So we're going to continue doing that. And we're going to do that through some surveys, focus groups, and meetings, just like we did in the first phase. that's our commitment to all of you out there. And in terms of more specifically what's coming up in this next year, so between now and 2026, when we want to start implementing things, the first step is going to be in the next couple of months to define some sort of high-level purpose for these two streams. Tom mentioned the two names that are in place right now and the recommendations. Well, that's going to be something we need to figure out, like high level. What do we want these streams to be? What do we see for them? Like, are they exactly the same, just different schedule? Do we want different rules? Do we want what kind of names do we want to have for them? What's going to work for our members and our participants? So we're going to define that, and that's going to help us in the second phase, which will happen after the holidays when we come back in January, which is going to be the nitty-gritty stuff, getting into the details of the rules and how things are going to work so that we can actually develop the youth competition manual with all of the processes that are needed to make this work. But first, we need to know what we want those streams to be. So what's the objective? Once we have that, it'll be much easier to then figure out the details. So all of this with the goal of having some final input from our key stakeholders in May after OCs. We know that April's not on this slide because you all know that April is Ontario Championships. That's what we'll be doing. That's going to be great though, because it's going to fall kind of at towards the end of this process when we want to have more certainty, because Ontario Championships is always a great time for all of us to get to talk to you, talk to coaches, club presidents, members of the community, because it's when we all gather, and we're going to be at Intercare this year. So we're all going to be under one roof. It's going to be amazing. So yeah, and then in June is when we typically publish a what's new, and this is when we're going to have all those details written down and shared with the public in general. So throughout this process, there's going to be regular updates. The website that I guess the web page on our website that I shared with you in the chat, this is where we're going to have all of the details of this process. So when there's a town hall, when there's a consultation, when there's a meeting and whatnot, a survey, information will be on there. We'll use other common means of communication, obviously, to communicate that, social media or newsletters, but you'll be able to find the information about this process on that page on the website as we go forward. So that's that. Obviously, like I said, we're not here to provide you with a lot of details as to how this is all going to work, because we don't know. We need to talk to all of you first to determine that, because we're going to do that together. So I can't answer very detailed questions about, okay, who's, how is it going to work for teams playing up and all that stuff. But if there's any questions regarding the recommendations, the process that we took, and all that stuff, we'll be really happy to answer those. Because for me, it's done. Tom, did you say you had something else after? Okay.
No, I think we just
You want to wrap this up?
There's a reminder slide kind of there of what the recommendation and support recommendations are, just as kind of a visual. So if people had questions, it have a bit of a guide for them.
I have a question. I'm trying to see where you can put your hand up. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we hear you.
Yeah, for sure.
So I see you're wanting to continue teams to play up, but then your next point is more regional play. So as a parent, I have a problem with this. I feel that if you're playing up, if you're U15, then you play up to U16 in whatever category you are in U15. But that's not what happens. They take that U15 and they drop them down and play the lower category at a U16 tournament. And I think they do it because it's closer. Like, to me, if you're playing up, so what? If you're in Ottawa, you might have to go to Windsor for that tournament. Like, why put them in a lower level tournament? Because at the age 15 and higher, their skill level, it's not based on their age, it's based on their skill. Like, not too many girls are growing that much after the age of 15, to be honest. I mean, They don't. So if you're, you know, height or whatever, yes, their skill improves as they age, but the way it's been done, as a lot of parents have, and I know it's the reason you get so many complaints about it, it's the fact that you're allowing these teams, technically, yeah, they're playing up to a different age level, but you're actually playing them down. You're playing them down to a lower level of play. And so it ends up being very frustrating if you're a U16 and the two top winners are U15 teams that were ranked way higher than anybody else at the tournament. So I think the fact that the two top points are playing up and more regional play, like you got to figure out a way to balance that. And I don't have a problem with playing up, but then play up appropriately. And you have play up as appropriate, but that's an important factor that OVA has missed in the last few years. So I hope that I haven't read the report because I didn't have access to it. And like I said, I'm not on your board. I'm just a parent, a manager of one of the teams. And like the parents are extremely frustrated with this playing up process, you know, and
Well, thanks for sharing that, Lisa.
yeah,
That's really that's good. Because your question and your comment is really helping us identify something that we need to keep an eye on as we do this. So because the playing up is something that came up a lot, and like Tom said earlier, some people love it, some people don't. But what I'm hearing is that it's not necessarily that the playing up is bad, is the way that it's done, and that's
yeah.
really good for us to know. So
And I
I'm
think,
putting that in the notes.
yeah, like play up, but go where you're playing
Yep,
to your level. So if you're a white team, you're
absolutely.
playing in white. If you're, it doesn't matter if you're 15 or 16, you're going to play in the white group if that's your level. You're going to play in the green group if that's your level. You're going to play select if that's your level.
Yep.
And you have to travel then. That's by playing up, that's your factor. Forget about trying to make it close. If you're playing up, you
Yep.
go wherever your level is.
Absolutely.
I think then you would have
Yeah.
less people upset. And I know having talked
Lisa,
to
sorry.
Jacob, yeah,
I'm just gonna interrupt you here
yeah,
because we're getting into the
I know.
nitty-gritty. And I said, yeah, there's gonna be opportunities for you to come in, and like we're gonna have like a couple of hours to discuss exactly this, and we can go into detail of this. This is not necessarily the place for having this detailed conversation, but I took the note, and it's definitely going into the things that we're going to consider and that we're going to talk to people about, whether it's parents, athletes, coaches, when we go into the consultation. But I really appreciate you bringing this up. I don't mean to, undermine your point. It's a really good point. I just want to
Okay.
give everybody a chance to ask your question in the time that we have tonight. Thank you.
LP, are you gonna check the chat's got a couple of questions? I have a couple.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, for sure.
one was, are you gonna be looking to cap the numbers in each stream? Because I actually think by offering a lower tier, you're actually gonna grow far faster than the status quo, because I know there are some clubs that try to run like select programs or development programs, but they struggle to get the tournaments together. So I actually think if you offer a development stream, you might get a huge surge in that category on top of what's already growing in the rep level, because now you're going to make it easier on that front for them. And so inadvertently, I think you might grow faster than you would if you didn't change this. So I'm not pro or against, I just meant for consideration. How are you going to deal with if
Interesting.
the numbers grow even faster than you think they are?
Yeah, it's a good point. Good question. And I don't know the answer to this. What I know is that is one of the things that we want to do in this first step when we define kind of the purpose of these streams, is determine what that looks like. Yeah, do we cap it, right? Do we go, okay, well, 96 in the national stream is the max that we can have, and everybody else is in the other one, or is it a self-declare? So these are things we need to determine at first. So that will be part of the survey that's going to
No,
come
fair enough.
out.
I'm not looking for an answer. I
So-
just think that it
Yeah.
might be an unintended consequence
Yeah, it's
of
very
this.
interesting. Yeah.
Just side note. The other comment, I mean, I'm just saying, I'm an operations person. I know this problem, and I'm like, if you gave me an easier way, I'll go that way. The second question I had was just about the timing of when things are going to be solidifying, because I saw that some decisions won't be delivered till mid-June. It's more a comment of the reality is for any team that's 15U and up, at least the ones that run in the more higher divisions, probably half of Trillium White and up, are all made in June. So it's going to be really hard to pick teams or make teams if they don't actually know what the structure is going to be like. So I was just looking for, is all that structure going to be like 90% decided in December? So it gives teams and clubs plans, you know, so that they can organize themselves for the launch of, you know, open gym season, which basically happens in June, and team solidified, versus if it's still moving parts and not coming out until mid or late June, you know, that's going to be a real challenge, because the reality is like September tryouts don't exist anymore in age groups 15U and above, right? Like it's June and it's really May and June, and July 1's a formality, to be perfectly frank, in a lot of places, and then it runs all summer. But just wondering, like, do you think you'll have enough decided that clubs can decide what kind of teams they're going to run?
Yeah, it's a good question. We'll have a good idea of where we're going, and again, like as we determine some information, we'll put it up on that webpage that's there. We'll communicate that. So one of the things that we've identified as a very important point to figure out as soon as possible as part of this kind of higher level purpose for each stream is specifically with regards to tryout, because and not just that, but specifically with regards to tryout and the fact that our registration system is not the most flexible. So we're going to have to find a way to make that work. So that's going to be one of the first things that we need to figure out before we even do what are going to be the rules and whatnot, right? So yeah, so what you're saying there is exactly why we need to go and talk to clubs, because we need to hear that. We need to hear, well, you know, we're going to have our re-sign in and offers and whatnot during the open period. We're going to have our team made in June. So we need to organize this process so that it works with that timeline. So I appreciate your comment, and that's really good for us to hear that. I guess I'm going to say, like, stay tuned, and we're gonna. I'm pretty sure as we work with the clubs and the IVDC and the committees, hear that again, and I think that's going to steer the way that this implementation process goes.
Thank you.
No, thank you for your question. I see the next one. So some of these recommendations can be challenging for mid-sized clubs. Don't always have 2 teams per age. So, okay, that's a great comment, and I'm gonna pass it on to you, Tom, you know, for this question in terms of how, if there is any information about the size of clubs that were surveyed, but I'm just reading into the last line of your question, Amanda, and it's not going to be necessary for clubs to have a team in each stream. At least that's not how I envision this. You could have a club with 1 team in one stream or 2 teams in the other one. I don't think there's going to be any pressure to field a team in each stream. So I think from that perspective, it's going to be pretty flexible. Tom, can you say something about the size of clubs that were surveyed and how these recommendations would be tailored to like different size club?
Yeah, we didn't do research tied to the size of the clubs. The sessions that we had were comprised of clubs of varying size, and there certainly wasn't a sense that there would be a requirement for clubs to have teams in each of the streams. The streams are designed for clubs to choose which stream for which level of team. But I think, again, that's part of the dialogue as this starts to be considered and rolled out, is having discussions with clubs of differing size and teasing out what those key concerns are going to be, and then aligning things appropriately. But the idea is to maximize choice here, rather than try and force people into one stream or another. Hope that's helpful.
Thanks, Tom. The last question I see in the chat is about shorter season and permits. And that's a very great question, a good point. And we're very aware of that. And this is, I think, the piece where Sport for Life gave us these recommendations. And it doesn't mean that everything that's in that report is happening next year or at all. So there are some recommendations that are in there that are not going to happen. I'll give you an example. In the report, you're going to see a recommendation around getting, lobbying OFSA to, change the season to volleyball for girls and boys. So it's, like out west. And we've tried that many, many times, and it's not happening, right? It's a great recommendation. It's a great idea. It would be awesome, but it doesn't work for us in Ontario, and there's no appetite on the OFSA side for this kind of change to happen. Just like a quick example. So there are things in the recommendations that are not going to work right away. So I do understand your point, and I agree that it's going to be really hard for us in Ontario to have a shorter season because of the number of tournaments we're running, the number of permits that are required. And oftentimes it's just we just need a longer season to be able to fit everybody and to be able to give everybody their 4 tournaments before Ontario Championship. So, but the thing that I can say is that we're going to try. We're going to try our best with the recommendations, and where they hit the constraints that we have, there's going to be limitations. But I think there's a bunch of recommendations we're going to be able to deliver, and that are going to bring about some really good change for the community and volleyball in Ontario. So, Andrew, I see you have your hand up. Please unmute.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to layer into that answer for Anne's benefit. I think sometimes when we make the reference to a shorter season, we think about ending the season earlier. What we really talked about was recognizing that we have guardrails at the OVA. Just for the benefit of all those on the call, I'm an OVA board member, and I was the one that was participating with LP on this particular project. And one of the guardrails that I was attempting to offer up was we are running up against limited resources and limited staff availability. And so the idea, and where we talked about a shorter season, it was actually a proposal that the regular season for those that are contemplating this, what we call quote unquote national stream, stays the same, but those that do not position themselves as going to a national competition actually have a longer season, giving us a little bit more latitude as to where we manage the provincial championships. So I think the definition of a shorter season was a little bit misleading. We're not talking about shortening it. We're just talking about it staying the same by comparison to, other groups that might have a season that culminates at the provincials. And so I simply wanted to share that additional piece of thought.
Thanks, Andrew. Okay, so I don't see anything else in the chat. And anyone else would like to just unmute and maybe ask another question or make another comment?
Sorry, it's Carrie here. I had a
everything
follow-up
that was
question,
great.
or just
Yeah.
just a follow-up question / idea to ponder. Don't need a response. Is if you were looking to do a hybrid year, you could always, without officially creating the tiers next year, do something like you ask teams that are Trillium Green, for example, to only register for up to X number of tournaments and offer more tournaments out of the gate to see how many teams actually sign up for the extra tournaments. You could gauge numbers that way. That might avoid that sort of rush of potential, as I said, select or development teams kind of joining the OVA. The other consideration is, how would you seed or allow people to go in the divisions? Because one of the beauties of the OVA today is that you reseed after every tournament. And so you could have teams, you know, that are not strong in that upper tier, and teams that, if especially if you had to go into a cap situation, that, or you didn't have enough spots, whether it's a cap or whatever, that can't get into the higher play versus ones that are like clogging up the system. So just something, it's one of the most beautiful
Yep.
things I actually think about the OVA, the fact that it's reseeded every tournament, which
Yep.
kind of solves this problem of, you could say X tier and above has extra tournaments or whatever, but the challenge is because you get reseeded, you know, you're kind of moving throughout the system. So maybe, you know, it's a look at saying like whoever's in Trillium Green or whatever, they have you know, at time X has a provincials that's earlier. And if you're in the other ones, you know, whatever, I don't know, but something like you could play around with it without creating the tiers to get a sense of how many tournaments people really want. Because the reality is, you look at your data today, you know how many people are playing up. They're playing up, a lot of them, because they don't have other tournaments to go to. We're also seeing a surge in exhibition tournaments happening locally. So people want even more. And if you probably look at the top 80, 90 teams or more across the province in any age group, they're probably doing 12 to 15 tournaments a year as it is today. So I don't think you're going to see the numbers drop significantly. Unfortunately, there's just so much demand,
Yep.
right? So,
Yep.
anyways,
Yep.
that's just some comments.
No, that's good. That's good, and that allows me to actually speak to something that I wanted to share, and that I didn't, and it is that we started this process because we wanted to be proactive, and we wanted to be prepared for when the growth becomes overwhelming, and it's not there yet. So we're still okay. Now for next year, where there's a need to go ahead with some sort of streams, is that for provincial championships in 2027, we do need smaller groups to be able to fit Ontario championships. So for example, I believe it is 50 new girls, that if the growth continues the way it has this year to next year, we would not have a big enough facility to host all of the 50 new over like the same 3 days. So that's only really a need for next year for OCs, that we would be really helpful if we could split. But we're good until 2029 in terms of what we have right now in terms of facilities and bookings for Ontario championships. And we know that we have the flexibility to make this work with OVA regular season events. So all that to say that we're not in panic mode yet. Like things are still working out and we're being proactive. Now, in terms of the seeding and reseeding, that's one of the things that came up in the results of the surveys. And we know it's one of the strengths of our system. So this is not something that we're looking to change. It's actually something that we see continuing within the two streams. The best way I can kind of describe it is it's really just kind of taking a big age group and putting dividing it in two, so that because the thing that we have right now is because it's a continuous ladder, you cannot have the one age group play on different days or different weekends, because you don't know when you're going to be, you know, where you're going to be and what tier you're going to be. So we want you to be able to plan ahead. But having two streams would mean that the one stream can 15 you can play on this weekend, and the next stream can play the following weekend, and you can still go up and down within that, but at least you know when you're going to play and it's going to be easy to schedule. So yeah, all great points. I just wanted to reassure everybody that things are going to change, but I don't see them changing that much that now you're in something that you completely don't recognize.
Hey, hi LP. How
Hi,
are you?
Lori.
Thanks all the work on this, and I really do like the the innovation and the forward thinking. And just as somebody who's managing expectations in the teams, I can foresee that this is going to create a hierarchy of like clamoring to be a little bit in the national side. And if I'm messaging this out to my coaches and the parents that are part of the community, it'll be interesting to see how we do message this. So it's not seen as, because if someone is signing up, we are a small club. We do have teams that have been successful, but I would say we are a smaller club and we don't always have that much like main stage success. That said, people don't necessarily, they still want it, or they want the
Yeah.
opportunity for it, and they may not self-select maybe what the vision for this is as appropriate. And I can see it becoming almost contentious. And yeah, anyway,
Yeah. No,
think
I agree. I agree. That's why I like what Tom said, and we agree with their recommendations when they said they're two competitive streams, right? They're both competitive. I think what's going to happen eventually in the future is that there's going to be a need, and I think this is where the naming convention that currently exists kind of came from, is that there's going to be a point in the future where we don't have a choice but to host provincial championships in May. But you can't host championship on the OVA provincial championships in May if those teams are going to nationals. They need to play in April because they need a ranking to go to nationals. And so really, we're only talking about scheduling tournaments in a way that works for what you want to do. And so we might have the teams that are going to nationals plus a few more that are playing in this, that are playing the championships in April. And we know there's tons of teams that are competitive that have no interest in going to nationals, that could be playing the provincials later, right? So I think it's kind of where it came from. Now, it's going to be a lot of work for us and for you guys at the club level to communicate this with parents and athletes and say, like, it's not less good. It's the exact same thing. It's the exact same. You're getting the same level of like refereeing, the same, quality venues, the same types of tournaments, the same everything. You get the same banner at provincial championships for winning the stream. You get the same medals, right? Like, it's the same thing. You're just playing on different days. So yeah, it's gonna be a lot of work, but we have to move in that direction if we want to be prepared for that growth that we know is out there. Because we do know that clubs are turning around tons of athletes, but clubs are also figuring out every year how to create more teams and put more teams together. So if we want to be able to continue having the chance to play in the competition that we have right now, we're gonna have to figure it out. So we're really looking forward to all these conversations. We're gonna have a lot of them in the coming weeks and months. And you see just with these comments and questions, you see right there why it's so important that we work together with the clubs, the club leaders, the coaches, the parents, so that we consider all these things and come up with an implementation plan that's going to work. So I'm just going to look at this comment here, and then yeah. So Nicole, yeah, it's going to be important to see how we decide who and what team plays in which stream and how we divide it up. It's something we're going to come up with. So I mean, just respecting your time, and also I know people want to get to maybe the Jays game and whatnot. We're going to be around. We're here. If you have other questions, you can email us. You can call us. We're happy to answer your questions. If you want to make sure that you get the information about how you can contribute to this process, make sure you keep an eye on the website on that webpage, that you follow our social media, that you open up our newsletters, that you open up the emails that we're going to send as part of some targeted campaigns for this. keep up with all that stuff, and you're not going to miss the calls for contributing to this process via surveys or meetings and town halls and whatnot. So I really appreciate all of you coming on this call tonight. Tom, any last words from you?
Just to say it's very interesting to hear the level of interest and engagement in now the next steps of implementing and discussing some of these things. So and again, just a big thanks to the OVA for allowing us to be part of this, and hopefully it's helpful, and I wish everybody the very best going forward, because you're doing some great things, and these hopefully will help the system perform at an even higher level. So thanks so much to all of you.
Thank you, Tom. I'm just going to add one piece, LP, along with my thank you to Tom and Tawana, Sport for Life, LP, for putting this together. I know you have some concerns here about nationals. We have the same concerns with Volleyball Canada, and they have a capacity level as well. So all the provinces are meeting and discussing this coming up, but they are usually it's going to be tough for them to also get all of their feedback. So there will be changes also, hopefully, for nationals. We've been lobbying for more nationals to come to Ontario for some time. So we will continue with that because it is tough for Volleyball Canada and their resources as well. So they have they're experiencing the growth the same we are. So they don't have their solutions either. So stay tuned, and hopefully we'll be able to keep growing our sport more and more. But we'll have to have some patience with the nationals competitions. But this year we do have a Ontario 15U boys and 14U boys. So we're pretty excited to host that. But thank you for your time. And all we can say is go Jays.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Joanne. Thanks, Tom, Andrew, everybody, for coming on. And again, please don't hesitate to reach out and participate in the different activities that we're going to run through this implementation process. So thanks again, everyone, and have a great evening.